hear me and see the screen? Slides? Yes? All right. Welcome everybody to this session on behavior change. I'm terrible at all these housekeeping details, but I'll try to mention what I remember, and others can correct me if needed. So in this session and in the breakouts, the Zoom chat function is disabled for participants. So make sure you keep the browser window open that you use to join this session and that you will use to join the breakout sessions shortly. And if you ask questions in there, we'll try to adjust them. So welcome, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. This session today is on designing and delivering WASH behavior change at scale. And so, the idea really of this session is to talk about how to do behavior change well, but how to do that with a theory-informed sort of perspective. And so I'm going to give a brief intro, and we'll give a brief overview of the two breakouts, and then we'll split into breakout tracks, as we'll discuss shortly. So I just want to acknowledge up front, to talk about behavior change at a WASH conference right now. Obviously, for many of us, Val's passing looms large in our minds, and obviously in the substance of what we're discussing. And so I just wanted to mention, for those of you that don't know, this is Professor Val Curtis, who was at the London School of Hygiene for a number of decades, who was one of the big founders of behavior change theory and approaches within the WASH sector. The link at the bottom is to her inaugural lecture, which she gave, I think, just 2 months ago now, really summarizing her career and impact. And at the end of her presentation, she gave marching orders. There were several there, but I wanted to just call out a few that I think are really relevant to this session. So she in particular mentioned making behavior central, not just an afterthought. I think too often there's the engineers and the design and the behavior, and they're siloed and they're sequential. And we want to really think about behavior of not just individuals, behavior of governments and NGOs and systems, and all these sorts of things in our approaches. We really want to take an interdisciplinary approach. Val was a great example of someone with an interdisciplinary background. And so hopefully the presentations you see today will do that to some degree. And we really want to argue that there's a need for theoretical basis for interventions. And I think that's, Val obviously would argue for a particular aspect of that for evolutionary psychology as that overarching theory. I'll leave it to presenters to share where they agree or disagree as we move forward. But I just want to draw attention to why we're talking about theory when we're talking about behavior change interventions. So often discussions about theory can be, in a sense, too theoretical and not practical, but I very much hold to the idea that there's nothing as practical as a good theory. When we're designing behavioral interventions, I've often seen recently in some disciplines, they can leverage giant sample sizes and just throw out, 5 or 10 different interventions and then just pick the one that seems to happen to work. In many settings where we're working, we don't have the luxury of hundreds of thousands or millions of people we can try small changes in text on. And so we need to think a little bit more carefully about what might work and why. But then, importantly as well, if you try out a bunch of things in one setting and something works and others don't, and you have no theory, why did that work? Why would that work somewhere else? Why would, something else not work? And so I just wanted to call attention to the last published paper that I had that was co-authored with Val, in which we talked about, needing to move from interventions that are just sort of aware of theory. Maybe there's this thing, we draw this construct from here and that construct from there and try things, to, okay, let's, try to use some determinants from the same theory, to really saying, no, we need to look at theories to go from beginning to end, so that we can actually understand both the determinants, but also the design process and how that can be used effectively. So with that, not much more ado, I want to describe the two sessions briefly. So I'm going to talk about one of our breakouts, and then I'll pass over to Sylvie in a second. So track one is really going to be about different approaches to designing behavior change programs. And so we're going to have 4 presenters from different organizations that talk about different approaches, not so we can talk about which one is the best or right or wrong, but I think in particular, it's interesting to me that each of them is tailored to a different setting. So as I show on the screen, WaterAid is going to be talking about what the approaches they use for determining sort of national level advocacy campaigns. Sesame Workshop will be talking in particular about their Wash in Schools program, Wash Up, a program that's been designed and tested in a setting and then was taken and sort of expanded. World Vision works in a very different way than that, having sort of light touch interventions in a lot of places. And then Washam is going to talk in particular about the way to use theory to inform design in rapidly evolving settings, and in particular in the current COVID-19 context. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Sylvie. I'll stop sharing my screen. Over to you.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome everyone. I'm glad to see so many people are here. And I'm Sylvie Kramer. I'm the CEO of Ranas Limited. We are a Swiss-based behavior change consultancy working closely with RanasMosler, whose head you will see in a moment as well. So the second branch out session is about behavior change in BabyWASH. We're focusing ourselves on BabyWASH in this branch out. And BabyWASH, for those who don't know, is the term for a field of research and humanitarian practice that concerns itself with water, sanitation, and hygiene for children under 5 or babies in the first 1,000 days of their lives. And research has shown a strong connection between wash circumstances and behaviors and child mortality and stunting. The latter is a term for underdevelopment according to age in children. During the branch out session 2, Professor Hans-Joachim Mosler from RanasMosler, and who's also a recently retired professor from the University of Zurich and the department head at ERWAC in Switzerland, will present research about behavior change BabyWASH interventions in Lao PDR, followed by Claire Chase from the World Bank, who will outline the lessons learned about bringing BabyWASH evidence into large-scale government programs in Lao PDR and Ethiopia. And the third presentation of the session will be held by Dr. Christine George and her colleague Camille Williams from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, who will speak about the development of evidence-based BabyWASH interventions to reduce exposure to fecal pathogens. It's part of the REDUCE program in DRC. So you will gain insight into applied behavior change BabyWASH projects and current findings and results in the field if you join this branch out. Back to you, Ben. Thank you.
So muted. Great, thanks. Okay, everyone. So at this time, if you can go back to the main session website and click on one of the links, feel free to join one or go back and forth or catch the recording that will be recorded, of course, and we'll have some combined Q&A at the end. So I'll see you all in our breakout rooms.